Hello there. Well, for many older drivers, the ability to drive isn't just about getting from A to B. It's about independence. It's routine. It's the ability to stay connected to family, friends, and the world outside the front door. But when the DVLA begins a medical review, that independence can disappear instantly. And for thousands of people, it doesn't return for weeks or months. You know, every week more drivers are pulled off the road while waiting for medical decisions, and that wait is getting longer, not shorter. And the DVLA says it has clear timelines for medical reviews, but for many older drivers those timelines collapse the moment their case enters the system. Welcome to Grey Matters. Hello there, and welcome to Grey Matters, the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters and has relevance, and which looks at issues that matter to the older generation. In this edition, we're asking why are thousands of older drivers waiting months for DVLA medical decisions? Now, these drivers are being left in limbo by the DVLA, and we want to know why decisions are taking so long, and what needs to change so that people aren't left without clarity for months at a time. Now, we acknowledge that this situation also affects drivers of any age who require a medical assessment to retain their licences, but this channel does prioritise the older generation in its reporting. But to head off any negative comments, that doesn't mean we don't care about everyone else who's affected, but we're looking at things from the older generation's point of view. Now, on paper, the DVLA's medical review process is quite straightforward. A driver reports a medical condition, or a GP notifies the DVLA. The DVLA sends out forms, gathers information, reviews the case, and makes a decision. Timelines published on their website suggest a structured, predictable process. Timelines are published on their website and they suggest a structured, predictable process. And in theory, each stage has a clear purpose. Collect the right medical details, assess the risk, make a fair decision, and communicate the outcome. It's a system apparently designed to balance road safety with the rights of drivers. And when everything works smoothly, it can be efficient. But for many older drivers, that's not the experience they get. And we know this because they've told us. In the comments on this channel, people describe waiting months with no updates, being told different things by different departments, and feeling completely shut out of the process. Some say they only discovered their case had stalled when they chased it themselves. The latest comment we have on this actually came in this morning from viewer Northstar 1950, who said, 3 months have waited so far. Some goon ran into the side of our car. I was entitled to a courtesy car, however I can't, because all I have is a letter saying I can carry on driving. Now, Northstar obviously needs to show his driving licence to get the courtesy car, but all he's got is that letter, which might be fine if he were to be stopped by the police, but not for a scenario like this. So he goes on to say, I phoned and complained, and they say they've sent me a questionnaire. Now, this has entailed me giving them the names of the consultants I've seen. But he says, I haven't seen a consultant for years. You can feel the frustration here, going round and round in circles and getting nowhere. Another viewer has been waiting for nearly a year, and other viewers talk about the stress of losing their independence overnight with no clear idea of when or if they'll ever be able to drive again. Well, thankfully, the mainstream media has begun reporting on this issue. Recent coverage from Yahoo News has highlighted that drivers have been waiting for months for medical decisions, often with no updates at all. Some only receiving progress after involving their MPs, and others were told their forms hadn't even been opened weeks after sending them. What's going on? GB News echoed the same pattern, drivers reporting long delays, stalled cases and frustration with the DVLA's slow response after submitting medical forms. One report described a driver left unable to work for months after routine eye surgery because the DVLA couldn't give any time frame for a decision. And another highlighted the rising number of medical cases entering the system each year, a workload the DVLA admits is growing faster than they can process. Now, across these stories, the pattern is the same. Long waits, limited communication, and drivers left in complete uncertainty. Exactly what many of you have been telling us. The Daily Express reported that the DVLA itself had admitted to a surge in complex medical cases, leading to longer waiting times. They forecast nearly 925,000 medical applications will go through the system in 25-26, a significant increase that, unless they can get their act together, can only make things worse. And the problem has reached Parliament too. They Work For You has reported a written question was raised about it, and They Work For You confirmed that the average time for medical-related licensing decisions in 24-25 was 44 working days. Now that's down from the previous year, but the DVLA admitted cases can take much longer depending on the medical condition and the reliance on third-party medical information. So where do these delays actually begin? Where does this service break down? Well, it seems the first major slowdown happens before the DVLA even looks at medical details. Once the case is opened, it enters a queue, and that queue can be long, very long. Drivers often wait weeks just for the initial forms to be processed, and then there's another wait while the DVLA contacts GPs or specialists, and then another wait while those medical professionals respond, and yet another wait while the DVLA reviews the information. None of these steps are dramatic on their own, but together they create a chain of delays that can stretch a simple review into months of uncertainty. And the most frustrating part? Drivers rarely know at which stage their case is stuck. This is one of the biggest issues older drivers report. It isn't the delay itself, it's the silence. People are often left with no updates, no estimated timelines, no indication of progress, and no explanation for the hold-up. Phone lines are busy, emails go unanswered, and the online tracking tools don't always reflect what's actually happening. For someone who relies on their car for daily life, that silence can be incredibly stressful. It's not just a paperwork delay, it's a loss of independence with no clear end date. There is also a massive human impact to all this. I mean, when a licence is suspended or allowed to expire during a medical review, the consequences are real. Older drivers suddenly find themselves unable to get to medical appointments, unable to shop independently, unable to visit family, unable to continue working, and they find themselves dependent on others for basic travel. For many, driving isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline. And when the DVLA process stretches into months, that lifeline's cut off. People feeling isolated, anxious and powerless. Some even avoid reporting the medical changes because they fear of being trapped in the system. And that's not how a fair and transparent process should feel. And let's not forget, those drivers who live in big cities should at least have some travel alternatives. But if you live in a heavily rural area, that's a whole different ballgame. Are these delays inevitable? I don't believe for 1 minute they are. We often hear that the DVLA is under pressure or that medical cases are complex. And both those things can be true, but complexity doesn't explain why communication is so limited, why timelines vary so dramatically, why cases sit in queues for weeks without movement, and why drivers are left without updates for months. These aren't unavoidable delays. These are symptoms of a system that isn't keeping pace with the people who rely on it. A well-run process doesn't leave people in the dark. A transparent system doesn't rely on silence, and a fair system doesn't treat uncertainty as an acceptable outcome. So what needs to change? Older drivers, and in fact drivers of any age with reportable medical conditions, aren't asking for special treatment. They just want clear communications, realistic timelines, updates when cases stall, and a process that recognises the impact of long delays. These are basic expectations for any public service, especially one that affects people's independence and daily lives. So what can be done? If you've been affected by DVLA medical delays, you're not quite powerless. Whether or not you have faith in your local MP, you should raise the issue with him or her. Now, MPs can contact the DVLA directly on your behalf. They can request updates and they can escalate cases that have stalled. When enough people highlight the same problem, it becomes much harder for the Department for Transport to ignore them. Now, a little aside on this, I do know that when MPs get involved, things happen. Many years ago, I was with a firm that went bust, and I then got a new job, but the original firm had lost my P45, and I was on emergency rate tax for about 3 months, which took nearly all my salary, and I was, well, young family, we were really struggling. Got my MP involved. Now, when an MP requests something from another government department, they usually have to reply within 24 hours. So I sent a letter off first class on Monday to my MP, which he would have got Tuesday. On Wednesday, I got a letter from him with a copy of the letter he'd written to Inland Revenue. And on Friday, I got 2 letters. One from him showing the Inland Revenue's response, and the second one, a letter from Inland Revenue with a new P45, a new tax code, and a rebate of all the tax. That took a week. So it does depend a little bit on how good your MP is, but don't ignore the fact that they can have a good impact on it. Okay, so do write to your MP. This isn't about politics, it's about accountability, and it's about transparency, and it's about ensuring that drivers aren't left in limbo for months because the system can't keep up with its own workload. Your voice matters, and you know, when we all speak together, things can change. So if you're currently caught in this trap, or if you have ever been, please share your experiences in the comments. Your story will help others to understand what's happening, because there's going to be a lot of people in the same boat as you. And it helps push for the transparency drivers deserve. So that's about it for now. I've had my rant. I'm going to keep looking into this. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Do give it a like and a share. And don't forget, you can hype this video from a mobile device for the first 7 days it's online, and that helps it reach more viewers. We want to keep shining a light on these kinds of issues that can affect so many of us. There are lots of stories out there, I'm sure, that deserve to be heard. So yeah, let us know. We will continue to look into this particular thing. It's trying to get information out of DVLA. I know it's going to be a waste of time because we'll just get the usual old platitudes and stock answers. We need action, we need pressure, and I think perhaps on this occasion getting onto your MPs is the way to do it, because if all these MPs flood the Department for Transport with the same problem, things will get done and individual cases will get resolved quicker. Shouldn't happen that way, but that's what it is. Thank you for joining us, and until the next time on Grey Matters, is bye for now.